Hello everybody, welcome back to another video by dissociaDID. This is Soren and this video is going to be about boundaries. Lots of people talk about boundaries or are happy to sort of set boundaries but then struggle at the halfway point, which leads to your boundaries being ineffective. So first of all, we're going to tell you what boundaries are, we're going to tell you some examples of good, positive, healthy boundaries, we're going to tell you how to set them effectively and also how to follow through. So what are boundaries? Boundaries are a way of preemptively saying no to something in some circumstances. You are revoking your consent to an action or a behaviour and you are saying, no, I don't want this to happen in any future circumstances. But essentially you are expressing that you either do or don't want something to happen at any point in the future. A boundary is you saying no. Now, how is this different from just saying, oh, I didn't like that? Boundaries are rules about how people can engage with you. They are rules and they are not suggestions. This is why it's important that people are made aware of your boundaries. For example, if someone were to enter a space or take a test, you need to know what the rules are before you engage in that situation. Everybody knows what these rules are. Everybody would expect to receive a consequence if they broke those rules or did not abide by those rules, because they are there for a reason. Boundaries are the same kind of idea. Rules, not suggestions. If somebody places a boundary with you, this isn't just a, oh, I'm uncomfortable with this and I'd rather maybe you didn't do it again. It is, do not do this under any circumstances. This is my boundary, this is my rule. If you can't follow this rule, then there will be X circumstance, which we will go into in a minute about what sort of consequences may be appropriate. Now, because of this, if you've made somebody aware of a boundary, it should be taken seriously if that boundary is broken. If it was a genuine accident that didn't revolve around anything severe or endangering or illegal or something like that, perhaps then you could be like, oh, okay, I understand that you weren't aware, make sure it doesn't happen again, or there will be X consequences. But if somebody is knowingly breaking a boundary that they are aware that you have, that has been communicated to them previously, it should not be treated as a small mistake. If they are knowingly breaking that boundary, they are aware of their behaviour and what they're doing, they know that that boundary exists and you have communicated it to them previously, that is not a small mistake. Like I said, boundaries are not suggestions, they're rules. If people break boundaries, they're either harming you, disrespecting you, or they're testing you. Now, if they weren't aware of the boundary, or it was a genuine small mistake, something that couldn't really have that much of an impact, then that would be different. But if they are aware of A, the boundary, B, that their behaviour is about to break that boundary, and then they do it anyway, that is a big deal. Now, we're aware that boundaries are rules and not suggestions, and in other areas of life, we're all familiar with places or people or environments, companies, whatever, having rules, and if you were to break those rules, you would experience consequences. So for example, some clubs will not allow you to wear trainers when you go in. If you were to break that rule, you would be refused entry to the club, or you would potentially be removed from the club. In other areas like beach bars, they may have rules like no shirt, no shoes, no service. If you walk in there with no shirt on or no shoes on, they will remove you from the club. If you were to break rules around establishments where you were to start a fight, for example, or put someone else in harm's way, or harass someone, or cause trouble, you may be permanently barred from that place and not allowed entry again in the future. We understand that in many areas of life there are circumstances where there are rules that need to be followed, or there will be appropriate consequences for your actions. These consequences will be set to protect the person, place, business that set those rules. Your boundaries are your rules. They should be respected in exactly the same way. Somebody who would not have a problem with somebody else being chucked out of a club because they were harassing or assaulting someone should not have a problem with you saying, you broke my boundary that was, for example, don't verbally abuse me, don't assault me, don't put me in harm's way, or I will do the equivalent of throwing you out of the club and barring you, which is I will cut you off, no contact. You have lost your ability to interact with me and contact me because you have shown that you cannot respect these rules or these boundaries that were not easy to accidentally break, that you were made fully aware of. You have lost your ability to make that mistake again. You have no longer got any access to me for my own safety and my own protection. And also your self-respect. Your boundaries are your rules. Now, it's all well and good saying, hey, these are my boundaries, please respect them. But what happens after that? What happens if somebody does break a boundary? It can be very difficult to want to enforce your boundaries, especially if you are used to people becoming worse or abusive or combative when you do put down consequences or when you do remove yourself from them. It can also be difficult to follow through on boundaries if you don't think that you are worth protecting, or you have low self-esteem, or you are very, very empathetic and you want to understand where the other person's coming from. Like, oh yeah, I can understand how you might have done that. Or, I can empathize with your reasoning for doing that. But it doesn't matter because those are still your boundaries. You have set them to protect yourself. They will have to deal with the emotional fallout of them knowing that they harmed you. That's not your responsibility to deal with. You cannot control their behavior or their emotions, their actions, but what you can control is how much access they have to you and how much ability they have to harm you. Obviously, I'm saying this as if it's in a perfect world. If you're in, for example, an abusive situation, it can be a lot more complicated than that. Sometimes you may not be able to leave easily, and you may not be able to have a healthy boundary that you can set and enforce with no trouble. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. Your safety is paramount, and sometimes having good boundaries and enforcing good boundaries is part of making yourself safer. Setting and enforcing boundaries does not make you a bad person, even if it hurts someone else's feelings, because your boundaries are there to keep you safe. What about your feelings? Why would you consider them feeling bad or angry or hurt more important than the fact that they knowingly, willingly harmed you? Your responsibility is to protect yourself. And if you have DID or OSDD, to protect your system. If you have a family, to protect yourself and your children. Boundaries are rules for a reason. It's easy to get caught up in, or well, I'm scared of enforcing it, and maybe I can give them another chance, and maybe they won't do it again, or I feel really bad for them. I just don't want the drama and the stress of having to enforce it and then them getting mad at me and then having to deal with that, or what are they going to do if I try and protect myself because they're not going to like that. It's hard, I know it's hard. The boundaries are completely ineffective unless you enforce them. And some people will break your boundaries to test you. How much does this boundary really mean anything? How much can I get away with? And the more they do it, the more it will be like, oh, well, I forgave them for it before, so I'll forgive them for it again. Or, oh, this is just what they're like, and they're forgetful or whatever, or they didn't really mean it. It doesn't matter. They knew what they were doing. They harmed you. They broke a rule about how people are allowed to engage with you. Not a suggestion, a rule. If the rules are not to cheat on tests and people were just allowed to cheat on tests, then there would be no point in having the rule that says you can't cheat on tests. And the test itself would be worth nothing. Same thing with no shoes, no shirt, no service. If everyone in there was allowed in with, no shoes or no shirt because everyone had gone, oh, sorry, I forgot to bring a shirt with me today, then the rule is completely ineffective. It means nothing. You mean something. Your boundaries mean something. If it is safe to do so, you should enforce those boundaries to protect yourself and keep yourself safe, no matter what the other person thinks about that. If they've willingly, knowingly broken a boundary, they've already shown you that they don't care what you think. So trying to please them after they've shown you that they don't respect you, or they don't care about your safety, your desires, or the fact that you said no, because your boundary is a no. It is you revoking consent for something to ever happen in the future. If they do not respect that, that is not somebody who is safe to have in your life. So make sure to stick to your boundaries and follow through with the consequences of anyone breaking those boundaries to keep yourself safe, protected, and increase your self-respect. If people do see that your boundaries are just for show or that they won't be enforced, then they're not a deterrent. So what are some examples of boundaries and how can you enforce them? So for example, setting a boundary could look like saying, my boundary is X or consequence. So you might express that my boundary is not tolerating verbal abuse. And if you can't respect this boundary or you break this boundary, then I will have to cut contact with you for my own safety and my own protection. That is a boundary. I won't tolerate verbal abuse. And a consequence. If you break this boundary, if you verbally abuse me, I will cut contact with you and you will not have access to me anymore. Other boundaries might be, if you shout at my cat, then I won't let you come to my house anymore because I don't want you to be around my animals. You don't need to explain your reasoning behind boundaries either. If it makes you uncomfortable and it's something that you want to say no to and it's a big no that in any circumstance this will never be okay, that's a boundary and you don't need to explain why. If it hurts you for whatever reason, that's enough. Boundaries can also cover things that are illegal, obviously, which shouldn't even need to be a boundary because it's illegal, but it could cover things like, don't abuse me, don't hit me, don't harm my children, don't harm my animals, don't share private identifying information about me that could put me in danger. It can also be things that aren't illegal, like never contact me while I'm at hospital with my ill mother, for example. And if that has been expressed and understood, then there is no reason to break that boundary, unless it's an emergency. And then there are some things that will never be okay. Don't do XYZ. That's your boundary. Just make sure you follow through on it. Why? Because you are important. And if you are scared of what somebody might do, get help if you can. But what I will say is that if you do have somebody in your life and you are keeping them in your life because you're scared of what they'll do if you cut them out, and then they break boundaries that are harming you anyway, is there a point in keeping them in your life? Because regardless of whether they're in your life or out of your life, they are disrespecting you, potentially putting you in danger, harming you, breaking your boundaries, which is all the things that they would do if they were out of your life. But the difference is that you have some control over how much access they have to you. Like I said earlier, you can't control their behavior. You can't control what they're gonna do if you cut them off or if you tell them no or whatever. But you can control, in an ideal world, how much of your life and your personality, your immediate actions they can control or have access to. You are important and you deserve to be respected. Your safety should be paramount by people who love you and care about you. People who love and care about you will not break your boundaries if they are aware that they exist, because they would not want to harm you. So to summarize, boundaries are you saying no. They are you revoking consent for any action, behavior, or situation to happen involving you at any point in the future. You are revoking your consent in advance and saying, this is my no. I do not want you to ever treat me like this. And they are your rules about how you will allow people to engage with you and interact with you. If people want access to you, they have to follow the rules about how you are willing to be treated. If people break those boundaries while knowing that they are there and knowing that they will break a boundary if they commit that action, then you need to follow through with the consequences of that action, which you will probably have let them know before, or I am potentially banning you access to me completely. And it is up to you what you think the consequences should be. If you would like to help us assert our boundaries in the eyes of the law, we have been in an ongoing court case. It's been 4 years since the first legal letters were exchanged, and we fund the fees for our lawyers through crowdjustice.com. So Crowd Justice is a site where you can donate and then they send the money straight to our lawyers. It doesn't come to us, we can't touch it, it's never in our bank account, it goes straight to our lawyers, and then they can only use it for this case against Sergio Costa. And if you'd like to know what Sergio Costa did, we have a playlist called What Happened to dissociaDID, which explains everything with screenshots, court updates, fundraiser updates, and everything that you need to know. So if you would like to support us, please consider sharing that, sharing the original video, sharing the Crowd Justice link, or donating if you are able to. If you are not able to, please don't worry, and we appreciate the support. Another way to support us, if you'd like to, is Patreon, where you can get rewards. You can check it out for free, or you can join a tier for as low as $1 or £1 a month. And there you can find things like reward tiers that give you merch, or being able to suggest videos that you want to see, vote on videos that you want to see, bloopers reels for every video, upcoming clips and sneak peeks as to what next week's video will be, exclusive videos that aren't seen anywhere else, and pretty much anything that you like. You can find that at patreon.com/Kaya&Co or patreon.com/dissociaDID. We hope this video was helpful, and we will see you soon. Lots of love, everybody. Bye.